For Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. President Joe Biden is facing renewed pressure to step down as his party's nominee for president following an abysmal debate with Donald Trump last week. Texas Congressman Lloyd Doggett is the first member of Congress to call for Biden to drop out. He spoke last night on CNN.
We would be better off if we had a new candidate who could present a new vision for our country. And we can do that if we have an open and fair democratic process over the next few weeks.
Catherine Carley has more.
White House officials will reportedly meet with Democratic governors today as calls mount for President Joe Biden to step aside from the race. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer says he can still win her battleground state.
When Democrats lead and when President Biden is leading, our lives are getting better. Our standing in the world is getting better. And I think that's something all Americans benefit from.
Meanwhile, Texas Congressman Lloyd Doggett is the first sitting Democratic lawmaker to publicly call for Biden to withdraw. Longtime Biden supporter Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina tells MSNBC he's sticking with the president, but he'd support Vice President Kamala Harris should Biden drop out.
This party should not in any way do anything to work around Ms. Harris. We should do everything we can to bolster her, whether it's in second place or at the top of the ticket.
Polls following the first debate show Trump with a narrow lead among registered voters. I'm Catherine Carley for Pacifica Network and Public News Service.
The resentencing of Donald Trump for some 34 felonies in his election interference hush money case is now postponed until at least September 18th, as a presiding judge weighs the impacts from last week's Supreme Court ruling that grants presidents broad immunity from criminal prosecution. Trump was scheduled to face sentencing July 11th on his New York conviction. Some Democrats are calling for reforms to the Supreme Court in the wake of its ruling. Catherine Carley reports.
New York Democratic Congressman Joe Morelli says he'll introduce a constitutional amendment to reverse the ruling. He says no one, not even the president, is above the law.
There's no question that the president not only violated his oath of office, he precipitated an attack on the United States Capitol, on the Article I branch of government, the United States Congress. And I think there needs to be accountability for that.
In light of the decisions and numerous scandals, House Democrats are pushing Republican Speaker Mike Johnson to allow a vote on court ethics, term limits, or expansion. Johnson seems highly reluctant. I'm Catherine Carley for Pacifica Network and Public News Service.
A New York appeals court disbarred Trump's legal advisor and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani Tuesday. An appeals court in Manhattan ruled Giuliani repeatedly lied about Trump's 2020 election loss to Democrat Joe Biden and said Giuliani's name is stricken from the roll of attorneys. He was a primary mouthpiece for Trump's false claims of election fraud. Giuliani had already had his New York law license suspended for pushing election lies. President Joe Biden has proposed a new rule to address excessive heat in the workplace. This comes as tens of millions of people in the U.S. are under heat advisories. Christopher Martinez reports.
The proposed new rule would require employers to set up heat safety trainings, create emergency response plans, and provide water and shade for workers. Additional protections would kick in when the temperature rises above 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. New workers would be eased into hot jobs so their bodies can adjust. Extreme heat is the deadliest form of extreme weather event, and President Joe Biden points out heat is the #1 weather-related killer in the United States.
More people die from extreme heat than floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes combined.
The rule is largely modeled on heat standards in California, Oregon, and Washington state, all of which were created after farm worker deaths from extreme heat, according to the United Farm Workers Union. UFW President Teresa Romero calls Biden's announcement a bittersweet moment for farm workers, saying in a written statement, every significant heat safety regulation in America was written in the blood of farm workers. She says the new rule puts the federal government on the right side of history. 2 states, Texas and Florida, have passed legislation barring cities from requiring water and rest breaks for workplaces. And it's pretty likely that opponents will challenge Biden's proposed rule in court. The rule will not be final before 2026, midway into the next presidential term, and Republican candidate Donald Trump has already vowed to roll back Biden's various climate actions. So the fate of workplace heat protections may well be in the hands of voters come November. I'm Christopher Martinez.
Hurricane Beryl is roaring towards Jamaica as islanders scramble to make preparations after the powerful Category 4 storm killed at least 6 people and caused significant damage in the southeast Caribbean. Andrew Holmes is Jamaica's prime minister.
Hurricane Beryl is the earliest Category 5 hurricane on record. It highlights the growing impact of climate change on global weather patterns, particularly on small island developing states like Jamaica. While our carbon emissions are minuscule, our region bears the brunt of the impacts of climate change. The hurricane further highlights the urgent need for global climate action and targeted support to enhance resilience against the escalating dangers of climate change.
A hurricane warning is in effect for Jamaica, Grand Cayman, and Little Cayman. An Israeli strike on a declared safe zone in central Gaza killed at least 12 people, including a surgeon and his entire family. Dr. Hassan Hamdan was head of the burns and plastic surgery department at Al Nasser Hospital. Some of the dead had just fled Khan Yunis hours earlier to the safe zone that Israel ordered them to. Israel says 1.9 Palestinians are now crammed into central Gaza. 4 out of 5 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The UN warns waste and sewage have accumulated in large amounts in central Gaza, leaving the displaced at risk of the spread of intestinal and skin diseases. I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.